Hello and welcome to BlenderTutor.com. My name is Tom Latvies, and in the second part of this Creating a Super Nintendo in Blender tutorial, we're going to go over materials, texturing, lighting, and compositing for creating this image that we see right here. And along with that, we're also going to create the cables, and we're going to model really quickly these cable ports to plug into the Super Nintendo. So let's get started. So here's our finished scene from the end of the modeling tutorial. First thing I want to do really quick is take this. I'm gonna resave this. Okay, and let me turn on my screencast keys. Okay, so I want to, this controller is looking a little skinny right now. So what we actually have to do is open up our controller. I believe it was this one. We had to actually open up the file that we modeled it in, because when we affected this one, we could actually close here. Oh, I guess I did close it. So you could close the one that I just had open, the master final scene, and we're gonna open up our controller blend file, and this controller is just looking a little too skinny for my liking. So all we're gonna do is go to this front view and go into wireframe and box select the bottom. And we'll just move that down a little. And then I'm also going to box select this and move that to the center of our controller. Now let's look at that. And that already looks a lot better. The other thing I didn't do while modeling this originally was create these shoulder buttons. So let's just do that really quickly. So all I'll do is I'll grab a cube. You know what? Let's delete that. Go into this view. So let's go into edit mode on the actual controller. So it'll have the subsurf modifier on it. So add a cube. Just bring that up here. Scale it along the Y. And let's just make it about the right height. And then let's just move this over. Ooh. Okay. And I'd also like to delete the bottom of that because we won't be seeing it. So delete that face of the cube we were working on. And then let's also scale it down. So select all. I just hit L to select all. Scale it down along the Z. And let's just put it right there. Okay. So now what we're going to do is just go back into vertex mode. Add an edge loop. Go about the edge of there, and then another one over here. And in fact, I could just take this whole bottom row and just move that up along the Y a little. And I'm gonna just add a couple now in here, maybe like that. And we're gonna grab, let's look at it. Okay, I'll just add 2 along here. And now we basically just want to grab these over here. And let's go into we'll go into proportional editing, but we want to have connected only, because if we have it on enabled and we start moving this around, There we go. If we have it on enabled, it'll move everything around. We only want to move the button itself. So go to connected. And first I'm going to rotate this a little, but we can scale that down. Just use the middle mouse button to widen your selection area. So I'm going to rotate that a little, and then we're going to just move it down there like that. I'll unselect that. Or actually, I will reselect that and just move that itself. Just to round that out along the height of the controller. Okay. So let's just smooth this area out a little. It's a little high. And I might also just add an edge loop here. Add an edge loop in here and move it up a little. And then let's just put on smooth shading. And that's actually a little boxy, so let's grab this end and let's grab this end. And let's just scale along the Z. And now that rounded it out a little. Although this end's a little goofy still. I might just grab a couple more points. And then hit W. Here, let's go into a solid view. Hit W and go to smooth. And then over here, we could turn it up a little. Yep. And actually, you could turn on and off what you want to affect. I don't really want to affect the Y. And now let's turn that up a little. Oh. You know what? Let's unselect this over here. Ooh. Now turn that up a little. All right. Let's look at that. That's looking better. Especially at the angle that our controller is going to be at. We're never going to really see this button, but it'd be nice just to have it. So I'm going to move that down a little more. And now I'm going to hit Shift D on it. And just bring it up here. And then hit S, X, -1. And it'll just reverse it exactly the same size. And then we can just pretty much just drag that over exactly where we need it. Ooh. Never saw that up here. I mean, this is another thing, I guess, if we wanted that line going all the way, we'd have to fix it. But for now, since the way the controllers will be facing in our final render, we won't actually see that area. So I'm going to leave that. But you could fix it if you want to see more of your controller. So, okay, I'm pretty happy with that in terms of modeling. So let's save it. And let's get into texturing this controller. So first, let's just do basic materials. So we'll add a new material. I'll call this just main gray. And it would be helpful if we had an image. So I might just actually move this down now and turn opacity all the way up. Because I was actually just kind of pulling color samples from this image while I was texturing. So for the main gray, for a diffuse, well, it'll actually be more complicated than just a diffuse. But for now, we can just grab this color picker and grab that. And then let's go into the node editor. And we're gonna add a glossy because it's plastic, so it's gonna have a little not reflectivity, but it'll have, you know, some glossy edges, as you can see when light's hitting it on the corners. And then we'll also add a mix shader. And now this one will actually get more complicated because we're gonna start adding textures and everything. But right now I just want to go over basic materials. And it's gonna be, I mean, we could start looking at it. And we should probably add in some kind of a light. So let's, well, we could just select both layers. And usually I'll change this to a sun. Now let's look at that. Okay, so that is far too glossy for my liking. So we're gonna go to like 0.1. That'll make it only 0.1 glossy, so it'll be 90% diffuse right now. And also, this is a little soft. I might have it a little harsher. It's a 0.2 roughness right now. I might go to like 0.1, just to harshen those gloss edges right now. So, cool. I'm gonna leave that as is, and we'll move on to other parts of the controller now. So we'll add another one. Let's do these buttons since they're so simple. Let's do a pink button. See, we have the pink and the purple buttons. So let's do the pink first. And it's going to be the same setup that we just did. We can, in fact, just right here, go to Mix Shader, select one of them as our diffuse, and then the other one as our glossy. And this right here, I'll just grab that pink color. Once again, we're going to probably do like 0.9 or 0.1, I'm sorry. And in fact, if you're using 2.66, you could see a preview now, which is really awesome. In the modeling tutorial, I was using 2.65. So if you have 2.66 now, and if you don't, I would recommend going and downloading it. You get a preview of your materials, which is very helpful. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's 2.66 that it added that, but maybe it was already there. Okay, so let's just 0.1 again. And now let's look at that. Oh, so the other thing we're gonna have to do is select everything that's going to be the new material. And then with the material selected, you could hit assign. To make it easier on myself, I'll usually make the viewport color the same as the material color so that I could actually see it, see the changes. So now let's look at that. Okay, so that's actually not glossy enough. Let's do 0.2. And then I'm going to go down to like 0.05. There we go. I want like nice and sharp. And in fact, with this, I believe to get the reflections properly on the buttons, I would actually add a light plane. So let's just give that a very simple material. And I'll just give it an emission material just to see some kind of reflection on these buttons. And so as I can see, that's still actually not sharp enough. I might do like 0.02. All right, and that's getting better. I might add that even a little higher, so 0.3, or at least like 0.25. Okay. And now for these buttons, it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing. So we could add pink button again, hit this 2 right here to create a new material from it, which basically just copies it. And let's call that purple. And then I'm going to just delete that end number. me drag this out real quick. Okay. And once again, I'm just going to go into that view, and for this one, I'll grab the purple, and as well, I'll change this. And now we just need to go into edit mode again and select everything and assign the new material. Cool. And now let's look in the rendered view, and cool. So that's looking good so far. We'll probably change those a little later, but for now, that'll be good. Okay, so what else do we have? So next, let's just do this dark gray area real quick. And we're going to do a couple things. Well, here. So let's add a new, we'll call dark gray. And as with everything, it'll have well, this will have several because we're going to actually have a texture on this. Oh, what am I doing? Let's go with a mix. And once again, use a diffuse and a glossy. And this one will be like, yeah, 0.05. It's going to be mostly the diffuse color for this one. And this is just like a dark gray. Once again, we could do a color picker from it. It's actually pretty similar to what I chose. And yeah, actually, this is probably fine for now. So let's, with that selected, assign. And once again, viewport color, do the same thing. Okay. All right, so let's do these buttons next. These are just, they're basically rubber buttons. Like these are plastic on the actual controller, but these are rubber, so they're going to be a lot softer glossiness. So I'll just select those two. And I'll create a new one. I'll just call these rubber buttons. So once again, let's do a mix shader. Do diffuse and glossy. That'll be a 0.05 as well. And let's see. I'm going to move this image up just so I can see it. So I could pull that. I'll just pull it from this center area, the color. And I mean, you know, I'm just pulling these for now as a base color, but we're probably going to clean them up a little because this is like kind of a weird photo. All these colors are a little off, but they're just good to use as base colors. We'll tweak the final colors at the end. Cool. And yeah, with this roughness, I might even have like 0.25. And then let's assign that. And once again, let's grab that. Because as you can see, this isn't even like fully, this is like kind of got some blue in it. And in the final version, I want to actually be okay, so we'll just do here. There we go. I want 0 saturation in that. Cool. So now let's look at that real quick and see how that looks. All right, that's looking pretty good as far as rubber is concerned. Just like a very soft glossiness to it. That might even be a little much, but for now, yeah, it's looking pretty okay. Let's do the D-pad next. So we'll just grab that. And that's going to be a pretty similar color to the rubber. So I might even just add a new one and grab the rubber. Oops. Let's get out of rubber. Edit mode. Delete that. Turn that into D-pad. I'm going to assign that. And I don't know. Let's just look at that. That's looking pretty okay. It's a little soft. I might sharpen that a little, maybe 0.15, and maybe a 0.075. Give it a little more. Yeah, because I mean this is more plastic than rubber on the actual controller, so it should be a little harsher. All right, and I mean, as far as materials go, then that's pretty much it for base materials. So we could get into the texturing now. As far as this is concerned, let's see here. Let me hide the actual controller really quick. Grab that, and let's just unwrap it. So it's already its own piece, but I'm just gonna unwrap it anyway, or mark seam on it anyway. So let's do that, and straight from the top, we will just here. Let's bring our image UV editor, and let's unwrap that. And now I'm gonna provide materials on the website. So I've already made a texture for this that I will provide. Let's see. So controller. So basically, right now, unwrap. Let's project from view. Yeah, it's still gonna squish it. All right. Well, turn off proportional editing. Turn that into as close to a circle as you can get it. And now if we look here, this line, this diagonal line right here, is going right between the buttons. So that's kind of going to be a placement for us. Let's put this over here. And we're going to need to scale it up because basically we had to make sure there's enough space past the A and the X so there's room for the buttons. So let's yeah, might be a little big. We could probably scale it down just a little bit. So let's leave it like that. And let's go into the materials for this. So this is going to be the dark gray material. So for this one, let's go over to we'll need our texture. And let's actually do as input, let's do texture coordinate, and we're also going to do a vector mapping. So we'll grab UV, plug that in there, and now if you select two nodes and hit F, it'll automatically connect them. So you can do that, and then we're just going to turn on the min and max check boxes. And then for this stuff, I'm going to move this up here. Move that up here, and then let's take this mix shader node, duplicate it, and we're going to take a new shader, diffuse, and I'm going to put that in there, and this down here, put that into the color. And then for alpha, I believe this is how I'm going to do it. Plug in that alpha node to the factor. Plug that in over here. And now let's look at this rendered and see how, okay, something's already, oh, right. We had to actually attach the material. So now let's look to see if this is doing what we want. And it is. So as you can see, we have our letters on here now. It's just they're not perfectly lined up. So now we have to go back into edit mode. And now this is kind of a good view that you could use to adjust the placement of this. So the Y is getting cut off right here. So we might want to shrink it down a little so it's farther out. And you'll have to get out of. So also it looks like the center point might be a little. I think we're going to want to move it towards the Y. Or no, we're going to want to move it away from the Y so it's like that maybe. Okay. So we're getting close now. We basically want the X and Y are looking good, although we might want to push them a little over to the right. And then the A is still a little high, so let's move that over just a little to the left. And I might scale that down a little more. And then I might move it, no, I don't want to move it towards the, something like that. This is the part just basically messing around with it until you get it to your liking. Okay, yeah, this A is still a little close to that edge, but other than that, it's looking pretty good. So for now, we'll just call that good. I'll let you adjust that to your liking. And now we just need to, let's go back into solid view. Now we need the start and select, and we need the Super Nintendo, or in our case, the Super Blintendo logo on it. So next step, let's Alt-H to unhide that. And in fact, we could hide that. We could hide all of this stuff that we don't need. Okay. And in fact, I might even just hide like the bottom half of the controller just to make it as simple on us as possible. I'm going to grab that outer loop, which it's not wanting to grab everything, so let's just I'm sorry. I want to grab that top loop. So make sure you're grabbing the very top loop like that. Okay. It looks like we have everything. So I'm going to just mark seam there. So now, and in fact, I might want to just make sure I have everything unselected. So unselect that bottom portion. So we basically only want the very top faces selected with that unwrap. And now, once again, we can unwrap, project from view, and we're going to want to clean this up. So let's scale along the Y, make that as much of a perfect circle as you can. Scale it up, and basically what we're going to use to line this up is the start and select buttons. So it's still a little big. So just something like that. And if you need a reference, just go back over here and look at that. So it looks like it's about 1/2 of the button's height length down, and this is about lined up with that button, and it's like half of the height of these letters down from the very top. So that's looking about right. So let's keep that and go back into here. And now let's go into our main gray. And we're going to basically do the exact same thing that we did with the other one. So we're going to move that stuff up. I'll duplicate this mix shader. Here, let's get this a little larger. And so we're going to need a texture. We're going to need a mapping. Well, so we'll need the coordinates and the vector mapping. And the reason we're adding that, if you haven't watched my quick tip on how to basically layer textures, if we don't use this vector mapping and turn on min-max, it'll just keep on repeating our textures. So I'll turn it off so you can see what it looks like. It does not look good though. It's not what we want. So then just add another diffuse, put that in color, put that in the bottom one. We'll take the alpha and put that up here, and this right here will go in our top shader. That goes right there. Let's disconnect that. And once again, we're going to have to select our controller, make sure that shows up. Cool. So first let's see how it looks right now. Cool. So these might be a little low. We might want to readjust those really quick. But other than that, I think I might scale that down just a little, or scale it up maybe. Move it over a little. And then move it down closer to the controller. Like that. Yeah. I'm a little happier with that now. So okay, so this is what it should look like. But if we turn this off, actually at the moment we seem to be fine. So maybe for this particular example, I think I actually did it a little differently in my original scene. So it looks like you might not actually need this right now. I just added it just in case. But basically the reason I have that is when I was doing it, it was like mirroring and tiling this. So like this logo right here would show up like over here, halfway cut off, and it just did not look good. So if you turn that on, it'll actually clip it. So it does not tile. It's just a 1x1 version of your texture. Cool. So that is done as far as the controller is concerned. Like I said, we might tweak these a little in the final scene. But for now, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to start closing all of this. Save that. And let's go on to open our console. And we'll just do the materials and textures for that now. So once again, for one, I'm just going to delete that, move that up. This one's even simpler than what we just did. So and in fact, what I like to do is, because the controller should be the same color as the console. If you actually looked at a Super Nintendo today, the bodies of the Super Nintendo have actually, a lot of them have aged pretty poorly, and they're a lot yellower than they are gray anymore. But for some reason, the actual controllers are still gray. I'm going to pretend like this is a nice new Super Nintendo. So I'm going to just select our console and go into materials. We could use this one for something else, but I'm going to go and append our material for our controller. So you can go into append, select your controller blend file, go to material, and then I believe is our main gray is what we want. So link append, and now I could choose that. And that should now technically, if we jump to our other scene, work. Now, I don't actually want all of this detail. This is far too glossy for my liking. But the color gray is what I wanted, so we'll be happy with that for now. The other thing I might do is I might turn up. Okay, I do have that on 3 for render, because if we look at that really quick, it's kind of low res still, so that'll round it out a little more for the final render, but for our viewport, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to now call this main gray console. And now we can go into our node editor. For one, we're actually going to need textures, so I'll just leave that there, but leave it blank for now. And let's go up here. I want to turn that down to like 0.05 or something. And we'll maybe turn that up to like 0.15 as well, just so it's not so glossy. Right. We won't be able to look at it at the moment because our texture node is plugged in. So technically we could just grab this one and stick it in there to look at it. And yeah, I'm liking that better. It's a softer reflection. Cool. So we'll save that. So let's just get to it. Once again, I'm going to move this up, this image. So for the top one, I'm going to move that up here so I could see a basic color. And in fact, once again, this purple is pretty similar to the purple on the controller, so I might just append that as well. That's going to be a lot easier for us. So let's do that purple button material, append that as well. Grab that. Let's add a new material, purple button, purple slider for this, and we'll assign. Take a look at it. And now it's a lot. This is too glossy for the console one was a lot less glossy. So we'll actually turn that down on this. We'll do like 0.1, and we'll, for roughness, it'll be like a 2, or maybe like a 1.5. And actually, maybe a little more. Maybe like a 0.2. No, let's do 0.1. Okay. That'll be pretty good for now. So on top of that, these are actually going to also be textured. So if we want to texture them separately, we're actually going to have to go into the, so I'm going to save this as a new file. And we could hit clipping on here. And we're actually going to need to apply our mirror modifier, so that now we can affect either side, because we need to texture these two buttons separately. So in face select mode, I'm just going to grab this face right here, and I'll just hit Control E, mark seam, and then also on this one, Control E, mark seam. And then let's look at our console. So what else needs a texture? So we need the eject texture on that middle button, and then we need the Super Blintendo texture right there. So as far as that's concerned, I think I just grabbed these three faces, and then in edge mode I deselected the center edges, so it's just that outer edge that we're selecting. Then mark a seam on that, and then in face select I also grabbed these two, and once again deselecting that center edge, and then mark seam right there. So now we have everything unwrapped that we're going to need, so we could start actually texturing it. So I'm going to also provide the texture for this console. Alright, so once again we're going to have to open the UV image editor, and let's just do starting with this one. So select that, unwrap, and so that's going to be the power. And if you see, it's like right in the center. It's about 1/3 the size of the width. So I'm going to just match that up as well as I can. So going to image, let's go to our textures, and I have the SNES console text or texture. So now let's grab this, scale it down so it's the general size again, and let's do that right there. And just put that in the center as well as you can. Let me scale that down a little. Okay. So now we get the joy of going through all of that again. So on our purple slider, if you remember what we did, we're going to take that mix shader, duplicate it again. We're going to grab our texture, and let's see if we need to actually, if we could get away with not doing the mapping thing that I was doing before. So we're just going to select the, here, let me see so you can see it, the SNES console text, put that in color. Oh wait, no, grab our diffuse right here, duplicate that one as well, put that in color, and then put that in the bottom shader. This mix can go up into this top one, and then our alpha will once again go into the factor. And let's see if that's gonna behave for us. It is, although it is upside down. So that's a simple fix. For one, these two look a little off, so I'm gonna move them over just a bit. And then let's just rotate that 180. There we go. So it's got some warping on it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, let's get out of render view, and let's extrude that in once, and then I believe we're gonna have to clear the seam on it. And let's just select all of those, and one more time. And in fact, let's just go from the top view, project from view. And once again, scale down till we're about where we think we should be. Let's see that. There we go. So that seemed to clear up that issue. I might try to make it a little bigger. Cool. And then we're just going to have to do the exact same thing on the other slider now. So let's just really quick. All right, cool. So now let's just really quickly, let's do this. So you can just select one of those faces, then hit L to select all linked. And in fact, what we're gonna do, I'm sorry, let's clear that seam altogether, and we're just going to add an edge loop and put it down here. And now go back into face select, grab those two, unselect that edge in the center, and now I'll mark a seam again. So for one, select all of this, and we're going to add a new material. So we'll call this the eject button. And it's going to be pretty much the same thing that we've been doing. So mix shader, we'll do a diffuse and a glossy, do a 0.1. It could stay as on a class glossy. So that could be like a 0.2 probably. And as far as our color is concerned, it'll just be like a darker gray. And we could do that over here too for the viewport. And now let's just assign it. And once again, if we want a preview of it, it's about what it should look like. So let's just look really quick. Yep, looks good to me. And now I'll just grab these two from the top view. Project from view, scale that around there, size it up. We're going to put that eject. It's going to be something like that. So now we're going to have to add in all of our fun little extras. So let's grab that, put that over here. Let's put in a texture. Let's duplicate our diffuse. Put the color in there. Bottom one, we'll grab this, put in the top, alpha into the factor, and put that there. And one more time, we're gonna have to select the actual texture. Make sure that updates. And now let's just take a look to see if it's doing what we want it to. And it is. Cool. So we're already almost there. All we need to do is add our little texture right there now. And now this is where I believe I was having the most issues. So we'll grab that and project from view. And scale it up on the Y. And then, I mean, that's pretty much just going to be fully scaled up till it fits in like that. And I think we're going to want it a little more over on this side. So let's just look. And the other thing is, I forgot, in our materials, we'll just grab the console texture. So just turn that back on. We cleared it out earlier. Oh, we're also going to have to reconnect all these. So let's just connect to that one now instead of that one. Make sure our material updates. Let's see if that's showing up. And it is, although it looks, I don't think the placement's perfect. Because, yeah, we're going to want it more lined up exactly there. So in fact, we didn't even need to select any of that. So let's unselect that real quick. With all this selected, just do a clear seam and then just select this one and mark seam. And now let's project from view again. Just scale it up. Throw that right there. And now let's look at it. Oof. So it's still got that. So here's what I did actually to get rid of that. You could select the rest of the console. Anything that you have cut out like this will actually not select. Cool. So, and we'll just hit unwrap. And it's going to give us all this jumbled mess. I just scale that all the way down. Put it over in this section where there's nothing. And now, as you can see there, it's just, there's no texture on it because there's nothing there. So that's it, although it's a little tiny. So it's not lining up where I want it. So I think that's why I did have the other one selected at first. So let's grab all those. Mark seam. And then just go into edge select. And we'll just grab these edges and then clear seam. Clear seam. And then we'll just reselect those. One more time. Project from view. I'm going to scale that up. And I'm going to want it mostly in that first box, but it could spread over a little. Now let's look at it. Okay, we're so close. Very close. Okay, I'm happy that's like pretty much on the line. All of this nonsense right here, we can just grab those two and move those in so that they're not actually overlapping with anything, and then we'll be good. And yeah, that's pretty much the texturing of it. So now let's just really quickly do the game cartridge. So let's open up our original game cartridge, and I'm just going to save this as a new blend file. And so when we first get into it, we should still have the mirror modifier on. So let's just right away go ahead and apply that. I'm going to turn clipping on just to link all the center vertices. Now let's really quickly append the main gray material from the console, or that's from the controller. So link and append, go to materials, and just select a main gray, and I'm gonna call that Cartridge, and I'm gonna go into the node editor really quick. And so over on our diffuse, for one, let's turn the saturation all the way down. And then let's also darken that, because the cartridges are actually a darker gray than the console itself is. That might be a little too dark. Let's maybe lighten it up a little. And let's look at that preview. That's pretty good, although that also might be a little shiny. Let's do like 0.15. Cool. And the other thing is over here in our texture, we can just turn off the texture for a second. It'll turn pink. What we're going to want to do is UV unwrap this really quickly. So if we go into edit mode, the last thing I did at least in the tutorial was I had all these selected and I extruded them inwards, so that's why these are all selected still. If you don't have these selected, that's fine. What we're going to want to do basically is select all of the faces in this indentation. So I'm going to actually want to grab this one as well, grab these. There should actually be one more in here, one more set of faces. So I'm just going to speed this up and select all these. You can follow along and select them yourself. Okay, so with these all selected, now let's just really quickly go into edge mode, and we're going to have to unselect all of these edges. So once again, I'm going to speed this up. Just follow along. Okay, so you're just going to want to look at that in wireframe view and just make sure you have that basically outer edge selected. Make sure there's no spaces. I think I'm okay. So let's do mark seam, and the quickest way to tell if you did it correctly is now if I do that and hit L, it'll only select the stuff that's in the seam, or if I select out of it, it'll select everything but that stuff. So this is correct. That's a quick way to test to make sure your UV unwrap is correct as well, or at least your seams. So now let's go into the UV image editor. With that selected, we're going to open a new image. It'll be the, oh, sorry, we're going to have to go into textures. It'll be the Yo Frankie game. So I actually got this from the actual real Yo Frankie game. If you don't know about that, that was made, it was one of the open Blender projects that it was basically a game created with the game engine inside of Blender, and I just grabbed this image from the website. I'll post that in the link, so you could actually go play this game. It's just not on a Super Nintendo. Cool. So with that image selected as our texture, I'm going to unwrap this, and I think I might have even done Smart UV Project. And now let's just grab that and rotate it. Oop. I guess let's grab all of that. Just hit A to select all. Rotate that like that, 90 degrees. And let's shrink that down on the Y. A little smaller. Just try to get that to fit in there all together. So now this may or may not be upside down. Let's find out. And the other thing I'm going to do is really quick. I'm going to grab this glossy and grab this mix. And we're going to mix these together really quick and make a new shader for this one. Because I wanted to have a little bit of glossiness on this material, since it was kind of like a plasticky sticker, so it's a little glossy. I'm going to make that a little harsher. Something like that. Cool. That should be good. Let's find out what we've done. Oh my god. So this is kind of that issue I was talking about, and it is upside down as well. So let's do two things. Let's unwrap that and rotate it like that. Okay. All these are one texture is correct. Really quick, I'm going to, just to see this better, I'm going to change this to a sun and rotate it towards our model. Okay. Oh, that looks very nice. and select that. Let's see. So the other thing is this doesn't actually have an alpha channel, it's just an image. So I don't think that's actually doing anything. Well, I guess it was. Oop, we don't want it on that one, we want it on that one. Let me take that away. Let's just see if I just do that. Is it still gonna be crazy? Yeah. Okay. So I guess, that is extra funky. Let's go into solid view and select everything else. And unwrap that. And I just, what happens if I put it outside of it? There we go. So you just, what I did there was I unwrapped everything but the inner area with the sticker on it. I scaled it down in our UV image editor over here, and I just moved it outside of the image so it wasn't doing what it was doing. So now that is pretty much what we want. So cool, we're all done here. Let's save. So let's open our final scene again. Now the thing I did here, I was saving them as separate files basically, so I'm gonna have to reappend every model in here really quick. For you, if you are not saving them as new scenes, you won't have to do that. So, or new blend files. So I'm going to really quick replace this with all the new stuff that we just textured, and then we'll get back into the tutorial. Okay, so I have brought everything in that we've created so far, and if we just look at it in the rendered view, you can see we have a nice Super Nintendo controller and a game cartridge. Now all we need is a cable for the controller and a little port right there. So let's just save this. All right. I'm going to create a new file really quick. Turn on my screencast. And we'll just add that image that I will provide. I already know I only want it from the top view. So let's go into reference. And we want this one. Turn up the opacity. All right, so with our starting cube, I'm just gonna make it about that wide. And I already know it's only gonna be about that tall, maybe a little less. And just hit Control-2 to add a subdivision surface modifier. Add 2 edge loops and just scale them along the X to give it some roundness, and then add 2 more going this direction, scale them along the Y, and those are going to go almost all the way to the edge. And the only other thing is we're going to add 2 more, scale them down along the Y again, and now just move them down along the Y, almost all the way to the bottom. We could scale them up a little more. We're basically going to create this little bump right here. We're not going to create the little indent for Nintendo or anything. You can if you'd like, but once again, it was such a small part that we're not going to see it up close. I didn't create it for mine. So then you could go into face select and just extrude that up just a little bit. That's probably already too much. Just like that. And then we'll add in an edge loop and put it right there, and then we'll bring one. You know, probably only need the one. And then with the face, just move it down a little more. And then we'll just add two more edge loops. Scale them along the X just to round that out. And go into smooth shading. And that's honestly pretty much it. The only other thing you might want to do is add 2 more edge loops on this side. And go into face select. And extrude this out like this. And maybe 2 more in here. Just so you have a little, like, you know, port or whatever. Like, that's basically where you're going to be plugging it in. That's a little too long. Might grab these, just move it like that, and that's pretty much it. So like let's call this like controller plugin or something. Or controller port, something like that, and we'll just really quickly give it a material. Dark plastic. Let's look at our preview, and we'll once again just give it basically the usual, a diffuse and a glossy. And I know this is going to be a darker gray and like 0.1 gloss. And that could be down to 0.1 as well, so it's a little sharper. And then let's just look at that really quick. And that should be fine. That's actually maybe a little too much. So like 0.08. Let's do a 1.5. I mean a 0.15, I'm sorry. Yeah, that should be okay. So, and then really quickly, I'll change the viewport color. And in our object, let's change it from cube to controller port. So save that, and then let's go back up and open our scene, and we'll append that in. So we'll look for our controller port. Grab it, and obviously that's insanely large, so basically it should be a little less than the width of this part right here. So let me scale it up just a little more. Around there is good, and then we'll just bring that up like that. And you just fine tune it a little. And then if you want, just duplicate that. Oh, and you know what? There's one other thing we're going to have to add to it. So we're going to need the little like controller port, like or the wire port sticking out of it. So just save that. And one more time, let's just go back here real quick. And we'll add in something like that. Take these, scaling up along the Z. We basically just want a square right there. And just take that, extrude out. And this is just going to be kind of like a fun little, as you can see, it should be, I guess, a little wider. We're going to want it, how big is it? It's about a little over 1/3 of the width. So let's just do this. Let's go to vertex. and grab that, and grab that, scale along the X, something like that. And then with this one, we'll just scale along the Z. Oop. Just grab all of that. Scale that along the Z so it's a square again. And now we'll just start extruding that. So if we look at that really quick, let me move it up. You see it comes out larger, then it gets smaller, larger, smaller, larger. So there's 3 little ridges in it. So I might move that a little more, and then extrude size. Here. Extrude scale down, maybe like that. Extrude out like that. Extrude and scale back up. And then just do like 3 of them that size. So then extrude, scale down again. And then on this one, scale it down like a lot more. And then you're going to extrude in. On the Y. So just extrude in like a very little amount. And then extrude again. Something like that. And now just to clean this up, we're just going to add in a bunch of edge loops on each of these. And then on these as well. There we go. We have our ridges. If that's a little too bumpy for you, I mean, it's going to be kind of far from the camera, so you're never going to see it super up close. But you could always just give it a little more on the render, so it's a little smoother. But that should be good now. So save that. Now let's go back into our final scene. And I guess that doesn't update. You might have to link it, not append it. If you append it, I don't think it updates. You have to link it so that it updates when you do that. So, I'm sorry. Link those next time. So let's go grab that one more time. And scale it down again. Put that right there. Right about in the center of that line, and then just Shift D, move it along the X to that one. There you go. And now we can move our controller kind of over here. And what we're going to do is add a cable now. So this is a fun part. It's actually really easy. So let's just, with this controller selected, hit Shift S and then cursor to selected. Put a 3D cursor right there in the center of the front of the controller, and add a Bezier curve. Rotate that, and basically just put the edge of it sticking out of the center, like right around there. And with this one, you just start extruding out of it, rotate it, maybe scale it up a little, extrude it, rotate it, scale up or down, extrude it, just keep on extruding, rotating, make a mess of your wire basically. That's basically what I did. I just extruded a bunch of times. I just looked at some wires on my ground to get an idea of, you know, what they should look like. And then I just started a lot of loops like this. Just smoothing it out as I go. And then eventually I just bring it in there. Straighten it out like that. Maybe scale it up a little. And I just put it in like about that much. And now it's perfectly flat, so what you're going to have to do is start grabbing individual points and moving them up a little. Anything that looks like it should be like, you know, not obviously not all of them can be up, so you have to have every few points need to be resting on the ground so it can look natural. But obviously, so let's give it a little depth really quick to give an idea of what it's going to look like. So go down to the object data of the curve, 3D, fill, full, and you're going to want to go to depth and just scale it up. And well, for one, let's move that up. This is kind of my gauge that I use to figure out how thick I'm going to need it. So put it into about the center of there. And for one, let's give it some more resolution. I think I had this up to like 4 or 5. So it looked nice and smooth. Maybe even 6. And then the surface resolution, I think I turned that up as well, or I at least turned this up. It basically gives it, if you see, if I turn that down, it's very blocky. The more I turn it up, the smoother it is. Okay, so that's a good. So okay, I use this now to look to see how big I needed to make it. So in depth, scale it up till it's about filling it. It could be a little smaller. And now, in this instance, I would say this chord is not long enough. It'll be okay for now since it's just practice, but for your scene, I would keep on extruding and make it longer. As you can see, this looks pretty unnatural. It's kind of like a harsh corner, so I'm going to scale it up so it's a little rounder. This one as well. Scale it up a little. Maybe rotate it. You don't want anything looking too sharp like this. They should be nice round corners. So the other thing is you can see like this is intersecting right here. So I'm going to want to like move that up a little, but then I might rotate it one way or another so it's kind of like resting on itself. This is another one that we're going to want to maybe move up a little. And then you can just start rotating, and you're basically, for your final scene, you're just going to want to make sure you have enough points resting on the ground so that it doesn't look like it's floating. So right now I have a lot of them floating. Like this right here is far too high. Because basically this green line is my ground, so a lot of these are floating right now. But that I kind of like that little loop. Like have some loops in it or something. Have some maybe knots. Just make it look interesting. You don't want to just be a straight cable. That's no fun. And then literally what I did with this is I just grabbed. For one, I usually parent the cable to the controller. So if you select the cable first, then the controller, hit Control P, and now whenever I move the controller around, it'll bring my cable with me, and then you'll just have to adjust to this end point. So then I'll grab these two, Shift D, move it along the X or something, and I'm going to rotate that like that. Put it over here. I might actually move this over. I'm going to rotate that along the Z. Put that over here. And now I'm just gonna adjust this real quick. I'll fast forward. And you make yours how you'd like yours to look. Okay. I mean, well, like I said, I would add a little more to this in your scene, but this will be good as an example. The last thing we'll want to do is just add a basic material to this. We'll just call it like cable or something. And let's just do the thing we've been doing this entire tutorial, diffuse and glossy. Like 0.1. This is more of a rubber cable again, so it's going to be a lot softer for the roughness, like maybe a 0.25 or something. The color of this will just be a dark gray. And let's do that too. And let's look at the preview. That's probably pretty okay, maybe 0.085 or something. And let's just look at that. Yeah, that's looking good. So the other thing is, look at it in this view, because you can see all these shadows. That means that's how much it's floating. It looks like my entire cable's floating. So I'm going to want to adjust all of these so that I have all these points touching the ground. And the other thing I was talking about is in terms of resolution of the curve. You can see that's looking all blocky. It's not looking very good right now. So for one, I want to move that, move a couple of these points down until stuff starts intersecting, and I can just clean it up. All right. So that's probably already a little better. Maybe this one too. Okay, and the other thing is I'm going to want to, I think maybe up to like 20 or something. And let's just do a similar thing to this. Up the resolution and give it the cable material. And I'm not going to fix that one up in terms of floating cables, but you'll want to for yours. And the other thing is you'll want to make sure you don't have any intersecting cables like that. So just, yeah, make sure you take care of that. And the other thing I did is I added 1 or 2 cables sticking out the back of it, so it looks like it's actually plugging into a TV. You'll want to do something like that, or at least if you could see the back of it, you'll want to do that. So from this angle, let's add a camera. If you hit Control-Alt-0 on your numpad, it'll place a camera from your view. And I might actually make this kind of a more wide angle lens, maybe like 32 or something. I'm just going to frame that up. Move it back a little more. Cool. And in terms of this, just move that, scale it up till it fills my floor. Cool. And I modeled like a really low poly TV stand behind it. I'll let you do that yourself. And I added a wood texture to the ground. You can see that in some of my other tutorials in terms of how to add the texture, but it's literally just a wood texture with some bump mapping on it. In terms of lighting, what I did was so let's import images planes, and I grabbed like one of these, like it was a freeze frame from the game itself, and just scale that up. And then let's look at texture. So in this, instead of a diffuse, I just had it an emission texture. Rotate it along the X. And I just had it up like this. And let's see what we have. And I think this was like a lot, yeah, maybe like 0.3. And I just had like a little yellow hue to it because I want it to look kind of nostalgic. So we'll do that over there. This can even be like a 0.2 because this was my main light, and I gave a nice reflection on the wooden floor as well. So the other thing I might do is something like that. And then I just adjusted the placement of that. Something like that. And you know, the size and the scale of it and everything. And even if it's a little too dark, bring it up to like a 10 or something, because it gives you nice color, like nice colors on it. Ooh, I'm actually getting some cool reflections on the controller buttons themselves, which I wasn't getting in my original one, although there's a slightly different camera angle. So that's the initial lighting I did. Now it's a lot more backlighting, but it gives everything a nice little colored lighting to it. The next thing I'm going to do is just add a light plane. Just bring it up here, scale it up a little, and then scale it along the X. And I might rotate that like that a little. And this was also some yellow lighting. So let's change that to an emission. I think it was like a 2 or 3. And that was like a yellow orange color. So we get some lighting on the front of everything. It might be a little, you know, it's a little strong, but it might be because it's so close. I might raise that a little higher. Okay. Cool. So let's just do like a quick test render to take a look how it actually turns out. So I'll do 150. So if you haven't seen Blender Gurus, he did like a little post a while back about tile size depending on how you're rendering. Since I'm rendering with a GPU, he recommends 256 by 256 tiles, which is under performance in the render panel. And it actually does it. It'll render quicker based on the tile size and how you're rendering. So if probably most of you are rendering with a CPU, you're going to want to do 16 tiles by 16 tiles, was I believe the quickest render speed. So I would recommend definitely looking into that and messing around with tile size, because it does make a difference. And the one other thing I might do really quickly is just add a little depth of field. So let's distance, I'm just going to bring that down to the floor basically. And then I usually go to f-stop and just do a 1 initially. And I'll just render that really quick. Okay, so that's pretty okay. It's hard to get a sense without adding the actual floor texture. So let me just do that really quick on mine, and we'll render it again. The other thing I want to do really quick is I always usually just turn the world settings all the way to black. I don't want the world or the environment lighting to affect my scene. I want to be fully lighting it myself. because that way you have better control over it. I could hide a light and see exactly what each light is doing by itself. I'm going to just actually get rid of the sun. I don't want it. I believe what I did was I duplicated this one, scaled it up like that, moved it far away, and with this one, I'll call this one like blue, and we'll just do a little bit of like blue lighting, and that might be from like an angle as well, so maybe we'll do like a side angle like that, and just get a quick look at that. Maybe I'll go up to 2 again, and just adding a little bit more color, and I want some like glares or something on that. Ooh, looks like a bomb's going off. Probably not what we want. Okay, so it's starting to add a little bit more lighting onto this controller, which is nice. Cool. So I will quickly add a texture to this. Okay, so I've added a wood texture to the ground now. And so as you can see, that kind of darkens everything up a little. And I also can see get a better idea of where my TV plane is rendering the light, or where it's reflecting off of. So I would actually like to move it down a little so that I get some more reflection right in the center instead of only on the console. So I'm just going to move that down a little bit, and I might turn everything else up a little bit. And let's see what that does for us. Cool. All right, so I might work a little more on the wood texture. It's a little soft. I might make that a little shinier. But aside from that, this is pretty good. Once again, like I said, I put a TV stand behind this Super Nintendo and maybe have like 1 or 2 cables coming out from it. But other than that, this is starting to come together. So let's just move on to compositing now. So you just go in the compositor view, and let's turn on use nodes and backdrop. And down here, just do viewer node. And so we'll grab that. And it was pretty, it was just simple compositing. I think I had a little bit of, under distort, I had a little bit of lens distortion. And we're also going to want to put in a viewer node. So we could actually see that back there. And so we could scale that down a little to see it better. And so basically, I think for distortion, let's see what 0.1 does. And then do fit. So it's a little too much. As you can see, it's starting to cut off the controllers and the top of the Super Nintendo. I think what I did was I might have had it around 0.1, maybe a little smaller, and then I pushed the camera back a little to adjust for that cutting off. But for now, I'll do that so it doesn't cut anything off, like a 0.05, just very minimal. And then also for dispersion, I did like a 0.01 or something, just like a little bit. You can kind of see there, it's a little blue on the edge. If I turn that down, 0.01, yeah. So it's affecting it a little bit. So I have that. Next, I'm just going to add in, I believe I had a color correct node, or a color balance node anyway. And I pretty much, so I might have darkened it a little, like darken the shadows a little, and then raise up the highlights a little bit. And mainly what I did was I pushed the mid colors into the yellow-orange area, And then maybe to offset that a little bit, I would turn the highlights into blues. But I want to kind of give it a nostalgic feel, so I changed it a lot more to warm colors. And that's about that. The only other thing I did was add a vignette. So really quickly, we'll add a lens distortion node and a math node. And then a blur node. Change that to like fast Gaussian. So we'll just put that into the top. And then put that into the image. And this is going to be a less than. And let's just connect that to the viewer really quick. We just want to see what we're getting. So you want to turn that all the way up to 1. And you need something, some kind of image to give it. So just grab that. There we go. Okay. So, and it's weird. So basically when you're doing your vignette, it can either be less than and you put it in the bottom value, or it could be greater than and you put it in the top slot. I believe that's how it works. Let's see. And then change that to 0. Yeah, so depending on what this is, it affects which slot you plug that into. So you can have it greater than, put it in the top, or less than, put it in the bottom. Then for our blur, you turn on relative, and just, I usually go for like 20%. To a really subtle one, but if you want a little stronger, you can do like 10 or 15%. So the last thing we're gonna do now is let's grab a color mix. We want that in the bottom and our original image in the top. And you just want multiply on it. And this is like at 100% multiply, so it's super dark. I might go to like a 0.55 or something, just a slight one. And that's about it. I believe that is all we need to do. So you might just want to, obviously I don't have enough samples on this. This is pretty low, and I don't have a finished scene yet, but that is the general idea of how to create that. Oh, as you can see, it looks like my cable at the front of my my controller is also a bit off, so you're gonna want to fix that, make sure that's lined up. I'll render this out one more time really quick and call that a tutorial. Okay, so I just rendered that out one more time. So I mean, yeah, that's about it. I rendered this at 800 samples. It's looking pretty good. This is half resolution for 1920 by 1080. I think I did my final image at full 100% 1920 by 1080. So I might have had it up to like maybe like 1,000 or 1,200 samples. Was pretty good for that. And the other thing is I would probably still fix this ground texture a little. I just found this wood texture on CG Textures, so you can just find it on there. It's tileable. And yeah, that's about it. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you next time. So bye.